how do we help high-end subject matter experts do their jobs well? It's another thing when you have people that are making, huge decisions, have millions of dollars at risk or billions of dollars at risk, and how do you help them do their work in a more accelerated way?
This bus is coming along and the door opens. And do you want to get on this AI bus not even knowing 2 years ago what that is?
For the listeners as to what to watch for, I think over the next 6 to 12 months is that
today is kind of a really interesting topic because really, if you think about today, what we want to try and introduce, and I'll introduce Doug here in a moment here, is artificial intelligence. Who's not talking about AI right now? And really, if you look at the U.S. stock market, what is it, 50% of the return this year is really kind of influenced by AI, right? So it's got that much of an influence. So before I go too much further, as Doug is sitting here, I want to introduce Doug Schweitzer. Doug is hardly busy, as we talked about earlier. Doug's a partner in the law firm, Blue Rock. He's one of the founders or co-founders of Ultimarii, which is an AI firm that we'll talk about here shortly. Plus, you've got a young family. All right, so Doug is hardly busy. So, Doug, we appreciate you taking the time here to come sit with us and have a discussion about AI. And I think from our listeners' perspective, what I'd hoped that we can kind of accomplish here today is kind of three things. The first is sort of a general conversation about AI. I know you're probably ahead of me, and I'm sort of, I would say, in grade 5 when it comes to AI, but we're learning. So a general conversation on AI. Number 2 is give listeners a little bit of a view that and where Matco is. With how we are incorporating AI and how we're learning and getting up the curve with the technology. And 3, obviously, what you're doing, which is important too. You're doing something really interesting. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but give you a chance to sort of say, here's what you're doing and what you're looking for in the marketplace. And so, again, Doug Schweitzer. So, Doug, thanks for joining us.
No, appreciate it, and really looking forward to the discussion. We got lots of ground to cover with those 3 topics. So,
well, and I don't know if people want to listen too much to us. So, hopefully, we can cover it in a fairly short period of time. They get sick and tired of my voice soon enough. But maybe tell me a little bit about how you see AI. I'm way up here. I'm not talking about the financial services industry. I'm talking about how do you see AI, and let me see if it dovetails into how we see it.
Well, I think when you take a look at what these AI tools can do today, like there's still limitations. So I think you actually have to be grounded in what is actually feasible now and then where it's heading. So they make sure that either your own business enterprise or your investment thesis is refined so you exactly know what you're getting into. So I'd say 2-3 years ago when ChatGPT really kind of took the world by storm, people saw it, and I would say that there was a bit of a hype cycle. There was definitely a hype cycle, and people thought that these tools were a little bit more mature than where they actually were sitting. So are they an amazing tool to help people write emails? Yes. Are they an excellent tool to maybe start some research? Yes. That being said, with hallucinations that came with some, large language models and AI, there's a few lawyers that wrote some legal briefs where the AI made up cases or case law. So I think people started to realize that there were limitations. So then it's like now we're getting into that next generation of AI tools where we're recognizing those early limitations and then figuring out how do we help high-end subject matter experts do their jobs well. It's one thing to write a recipe or help somebody write a poem, but it's another thing when you have people that are making huge decisions that have millions of dollars at risk or billions of dollars at risk, and how do you help them do their work in a more accelerated way. So I think that's really where the next couple of years of opportunity is how do you help subject matter experts do their jobs more efficiently?
Right. And so you kind of hit on something really interesting, like in my simple head, what you kind of, I'll paraphrase it from our perspective is that you look at AI and it's often technologies are overblown in the short term on what they can accomplish, but under discussed or maybe underutilized in what they can actually or will actually in the long term. So I think what you're hitting on is kind of where we came into this, saying this bus is coming along and the door opens, and do you want to get on this AI bus not even knowing 2 years ago what that is? So what is that? And you're explaining, you're going to go through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 of how AI can help. And that's kind of where we're at as well, is saying we know it can help us through the business, We know it's a must to get on the bus, but you're not quite sure exactly where the bus is going, if that makes sense. So if you look, maybe I'll speak about Matco maybe for a moment, and then I'll turn it over to you, and you can talk a little bit about what your the great project you guys are undertaking is. From Matco's perspective, we really have the front end of the business, which is the investment management, the sales and marketing, and then you got the operations of the business. I think most people can see how it helps with the operations of the business. You talked about, helping with writing, helping with making your service staff more productive. But the key for us is on the front end, on the investment management and on the sales and service piece. And we've undertaken, or at least in the initial stages of undertaking a project that we think can be really, really interesting for our clients and add value for our clients. And again, we know we're at grade 5, but we're working hard to sort of get to grade 10, 11, 12, and then to university. And we think we can do that sort of in the next, say, 6 months to a year, if not faster. So that's really exciting for us. But I don't want to steal all the mic time. So from your perspective, I know there's a lot of common denominators. From your perspective, tell me a little bit what you're doing.
Well, I think too, I think with what you're doing on the Matco side is definitely the right strategic move. Like, you need to be understanding where AI is going, how can it improve your operations, how can it improve your margin. And the other thing too for the listeners as to what to watch for, I think over the next 6 to 12 months is that every week now there's a new jump step in large language models that are coming out. You've got new companies that are popping up, and the different models are actually, they have their own personalities. So like some of the models are really strong at writing creatively. Other models now are being tuned to like mathematics and doing equations. So I actually think from like a financial institution or people that are doing investments, like some of the models that are going to be available in 2025, probably in the second half of the year, are really going to be powerful as it relates to like market analysis and doing some of that work. Whereas today they would struggle to actually add a huge amount of value. But if you're thinking today how to leverage your data sets in that world now, thinking through where the models are likely going to get to by the end of 2025, you'd be really well positioned to add a huge amount of value in that space.
And we agree with all that, by the way, with the timing, even though you're probably ahead of me grade-wise.
Well, the language models right now are really good at speaking written word. So, that's a good pivot point, because that's really where our company is focused and what we're working on. So to kind of give you like a little bit of insight into the genesis of the project that we're working on, the company's called Ultimarii. So in my previous life, before I left government, I was the Minister of Jobs, Economy, and Innovation in Alberta.
I probably should have introduced you better.
Oh, no. So just to give some people some context. So I had a life in government, and with that, it was an amazing learning experience. So before I went into government, I was a partner at a big international law firm. So I got exposed to high-end corporate work and working with big multi-billion-dollar companies. So at the same time, when you look at what was happening in the innovation space, so the exposure I had in government was to some of the leading AI thinkers in the country. So Alberta is very blessed. Like at the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, we have one of the 3 leading AI centers of excellence in Canada. University of Alberta is one of the top-ranked research institutions as it relates to machine learning and AI. And I was actually just listening to a big global podcast, and they were talking about like new models, and they were actually referencing the researchers at the U of A. So here we are in our own backyard. Right. Like Alberta, we know the energy industry in and out, and sometimes we forget.
But we're leaders there too, and we know some of the same people that we've been speaking to, right? And it's amazing it's right in our backyard.
Oh, it is. Again, you have amazing companies here. You got Amy, you got Ultimarii. Like there's so many cool companies that are here in our backyard. So when I saw that, and then with my experience in government, we did a lot of work around how do we, turn around the economy in the province. At that point in time, Alberta was struggling around 2020. So we did a lot of work on economic diversification. How do we grow the province and set it up for long-term success? So one of the areas that I was helping in was around red tape reduction. So how do we create the best possible investment environment? So we looked at regulations and policies.
There's no red tape in government, is there?
Oh, there's never any red tape in government. You never any. So we looked at how do we change that policy work and framework to attract investment, give people the certainty they need to make that final investment decision. And what I observed there was that there was a whole bunch of inefficiencies across Canada. We all know the story in Canada. It's one of the reasons that we've been falling behind the rest of the G7 is that we're really inefficient. So when I left government and I met all these different players in the AI space and the tech and innovation world, we came together and said, look, what is a problem set that we could go after? A bunch of people were going after conventional legal issues like contract reviews or research in conventional case law. but we saw a huge gap in the regulatory space. And I think one of the reasons why there was a gap there historically is that the material and volume of information was simply too large. So you're talking about millions of pages of filings that have to happen for a big project. So like Trans Mountain Pipeline, for example, had tens of thousands of individual documents filed. Right. You get interveners, you've got hearing transcripts. Consuming that level of information with legacy tools that were available 3 to 5 years ago, not possible. But with where the tools are now, with the AI's ability to synthesize large amounts of information, bring back relevant materials, help you summarize and analyze information, that's where the genesis of Ultimarii came from, is that we saw this as a huge opportunity to analyze different regulators, map out the full process from beginning to end, right, and add value to the users, and hopefully through that process, accelerate decision-making, take a 90-day interval of a process down to 30 days, reduce the cost of actually exploring new projects. So that was our thesis behind Ultimarii, and it's had a huge amount of success so far.
Right, and you're up and running. I mean, you've got the wheels turning. I mean, this isn't just, it's important to say because a lot of people that hear AI, it's just something that you can't touch yet. But I mean, I think you guys have got it to where you've got the business is functioning, you've got clients. And so I think that's important for listeners to know that it's moving, it's happening, right? And so I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you look at those big projects, like how much time, if you look at those big pipelines, is actually just red tape. Probably, I don't know have a number, but it's a huge amount of time that costs money, millions and millions and millions of dollars, right?
Well, and take a look at just to get to a final investment decision, it can cost 5 to 20% of the overall project cost, let alone getting shovels in the ground. So like that's and that's your highest risk dollars. Right. So if you can de-risk that process and make it faster, just the time value of money alone makes a huge return.
Yeah. And so from Ultimarii's perspective, if you look out the next 2 or 3 years, because many of our clients, we were fortunate to deal with a number of great clients. And a lot of our clients, yes, they like that core investing piece, but they will invest out into what we would call sort of the non-core pieces, which where I would put your project is a private deal that's at some point, I'm assuming you'll be looking for capital. So obviously from our perspective, maybe let our listeners know what that might look like going forward.
Yeah, so in 2024, our first quarter of this year was validating the business thesis. And then the second quarter, we went out and raised $2 million to get, the kind of prime the pump, get the machinery going. Third quarter, we went out and built the product. And then this quarter, we've been out selling and implementing with customers. So rapid growth. And we hit all of our sales metrics that we set for ourselves. And we have a really ambitious plan for early 2025. We're likely going to be doing what we call like a strategic round. So right now we have enough capital. We actually may even be revenue positive by the second quarter of the year, which is
fantastic.
Which is amazing news.
For high growth.
Yeah. Right. So we're at that point, but we're looking at where can we get to in 2025 with a little bit of extra juice, and so we're looking at doing a strategic round probably in the first quarter of next year. So if there's people that are interested in that type of an investment, happy to talk further on that.
There's a lot of similarities, right, in what we're talking about on how I think this technology helps us. From our perspective, when we look at Mako, we're actually not doing a lot different. It's different, but the same in the sense that you're really trying to add value to your customer, use these large language models to speed processes up, and get highly, highly accurate information, right? So in a way, it's not a lot different, right? When you look at, what you're trying to accomplish in the road that Mako was walking down as well. We're probably not as far ahead as you. Like I said, you sound like you're sort of in university, maybe, or grade 12 or university, whereas we wouldn't be that. But it's very exciting from our perspective to incorporate this, knowing that bus you and I are on, you're probably going to change buses 2 or 3 times because it's moving so fast. The technology is moving so fast, and as you mentioned, some of the skill set in Alberta. We're talking, I think, to some of the same people, and they're telling us, what you're doing today. Guess what? 6 months from now, it's totally changed. Right? That's how fast it's moving. So that's why we're talking about those different rides on a bus. Maybe it's a poor analogy. I don't know. But that's the analogy I've used being in my grade 5.
And I think the thing is, too, like you can't be afraid of actually saying, you know what, where we were 6 months ago and how fast it's moved, that means we have to rethink how we're set up. Like the idea of having like legacy technology systems that would be there for 5 years, I think is not the right strategy today. It's like how can we add value, define those use cases, and then make sure that we are nimble enough that if there's a new trend that comes along, we're not afraid to actually make sure we adjust and pivot as well.
Yeah. And I think that's why the smaller companies like us, the private companies, I think you mentioned Nimble. I think that's why it's probably we have actually in some ways an advantage, a disadvantage in some ways, but an advantage in some ways because you need to be nimble. Things are changing so quick. I was watching I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. I was watching a day or two ago Jeff Bezos. Everyone knows who he is with Amazon. And I was actually shocked. He was talking about a scenario where they tried 3 or 4 different things and it failed and it failed and it failed. And he was talking about the speed of technology that was actually the problem. And finally they got it right. But no one knew about the 3 or 4 times that it failed. Yeah. Right? No one ever knew what had happened or why they kind of moved along. And so there you go. You kind of get knocked down 3 or 4 times. And I suspect, us smaller companies until you kind of figure it out, that's exactly what's the path we're probably going to be on. But from a client perspective, really exciting. From a value add perspective, I think very exciting. And anyways, I'm rambling on again here, Doug, but I could probably talk for forever. But our listeners are probably, I always say the mind will only absorb what the backside can endure. Right, so we're kind of 10 or 15 minutes in here. So maybe I'll just give you some last words if you wanted to sort of talk about your deal and where they can reach you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you can reach us, through the Matco team, or you can reach out to us directly through our website, ultimarii.com. I'm sure we can put into the note the website
we'll
link.
Make sure we put it
So we would appreciate that. But I think the thing is too for listeners, there's lots of different ways. Like there's a lot of investment coming into the AI space. I think too from your lens, there's lots of different ways to make people comfortable with investing. There's going to be power demand needs. So if people are more comfortable investing into power generation, that's a part of the AI ecosystem overall. And obviously Alberta is uniquely positioned with an abundance of natural gas to help meet those power demands. I think you could invest in data centers. Data centers would be more conventional. It's an asset, it's compute, it's like cloud computing. You can probably get your head wrapped around that financial model. Or you can go into ventures like ours, which are earlier stage companies that have that growth curve where you can get probably a larger ROI but higher risk. So again, there's lots of different ways that you can look at that market and how to play in the AI space.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. We've talked long enough here, and so I do appreciate you coming in. I probably didn't give you a great introduction on the front end, but you did it yourself, so that maybe my hosting skills maybe better improve on the next one. But Doug, I appreciate you coming in, and thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Very good.